So what's the center of opinion in like North America?
Democracy is whatever the American Democrat Party says it is.
I think I heard you say so.
Yes.
Because you know
And-
what's so
right.
funny? Because
Yeah.
that was like one of the questions that kept like, I kept asking people and no one had a good answer. Because I was like, I always hear people say they're against democracy. And I'm like, I'm like, I don't get what that means because everything they say, it's like stuff they do too. It's like,
So-
I don't even, like, they're just like, I guess use like Trump, the election thing, but it's like they did this. I don't get it.
Okay. So let's take it. Let's start with different words and then come back to this one, right? Something like Christianity or communism or capitalism or democracy is such a capacious word that it can contain both X and its opposite. For example, right? Christianity originally, the original Christianity around the time of the Romans was a slave revolt that tore down the empire. Later, that same word Christianity was used to basically justify the so-called Holy Roman Empire, which styled itself a successor to the Roman Empire, and it was like a Christian fusion, right? The concept of a Christian king was sort of oxymoronic, at least for the early Christians, right? Like this was like a slave revolt, basically, right? And when you think about communism also has meant both killing all the capitalists and capitalists joining the Communist Party more recently, right?
Yeah.
And when you think about capitalism itself, think about what 1800s agrarian capitalism versus 1900s industrial capitalism versus 2000s technological capitalism. I mean, it's not quite the opposite, but it's very different, right?
Yeah.
The kinds of things,
Yeah, of course.
how you're counting, right?
Or like the tech version now versus
The tech version, exactly. That's what I mean. So, the technological capitalism of today in the
Okay.
2000s, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So, in the same way, like democracy means many different things. For example, one thing that you can do if you go to Google Ngrams or Google Books, actually, and there's a thing where you can type in and look at old words. I think it's Ngrams or Google Books, right? I think it's Google Ngrams. You can type in republic, democracy. And what you'll see is republic, people used to refer to the U.S. as a republic, and that's like declined.
It's more of like a Twitter thing that people say to argue now. Kind
Well,
Yeah,
so what
yeah.
you're going to get probably, in my view, you're going to get the Republicans starting to say our republic. And
I will actually. Now that you say that, I do notice there's more people on the right who refer to it as a republic.
Exactly.
Almost
as like a correction because they're always like, this is a democracy, and they're like, it's not.
Well,
It's not supposed
and
to
to
be.
show what side they're on. I think like almost
Yeah.
verbally, it's like the patriot thing. You know,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Only right wing people call themselves patriots on Twitter.
Yeah, exactly.
People
That's
on the
right.
left do never refer to themselves as patriots, even though they might be patriotic.
Sometimes like politicians will say like, if you were an actual patriot, you would do this.
Yes, yes, and that's like this sort of double reversal where you try to use the other guy's language on them. But and by the way, on this, like I think of Democrat Republican as becoming like Sunni versus Shiite. So I don't want any part of it. I just want to
like
be
the best theory.
Well, it's actually so. Let me actually put some meat on those bones, right? Something like 96% of Democrats are not married to Republicans. Okay. And if you look there, if you Google, for example, Vox actually has a link. Google Vox, Democrat Republican network diagram polarization. I think 2011. Okay, and what you'll see, you might put this in the show notes or afterwards, is a relatively unified, roughly bipartisan Congress in the 1940s that pulls apart gradually into two groups that only vote with each other. It's straight party line votes over and over again. The only, bipartisan votes are for like bailouts or bombings or things like that, okay? Which are when they do something both stupid and evil, it's bipartisan, if you've heard that term, right? And so the leadership is pulling into really two different groups. And there's a CJR 2017 article. It's like Breitbart changed right-wing media ecosystem that shows a similar diagram, not at the level of Congress, but the level of the population. Again, at the network level, you can see red and blue becoming literally separate networks, right? Now, what that means is it's not one nation under God, indivisible. It's two nations, the Democrat and Republican nations.
I will say that like, I do see in real life a lot of people where like the dude's sort of like a little more right wing and the girl's sort of more a little liberal, and it seems to work.
Yeah, but if you look, at least if you look at the numbers on this,
Who they actually vote for
when they
it's
marry,
more about the cities.
Yeah, exactly. It's becoming tribal, right? It's literally becoming something where ideology becomes biology in one generation. Meaning, basically, it's like Protestant Catholic, it's like Sunni Shiite. This is not something. If you look at all the graphs,
just like any other one.
Yeah, exactly. It's becoming two ethnic groups. Like Republicans marry Republicans and Democrats marry Democrats.
And they live in the different places.
That's the sort that's happening, right?
That's when people are talking about the divorce, like the people like
The national divorce.
National divorce.
Exactly.
Stuff like
So divorce has already happened in the cloud. We're seeing it start to materialize on the land.
basically like Twitter and Truth Social.
Yeah, right, exactly. So exactly in the cloud, you already have these social networks. You start to have apps that are right-coded, apps and podcasts and stuff that are left-coded, because you have foundational premises that divide these worldviews, you know? And then you're starting to get them physically sorting.
Yeah, because every argument just gets back to the original argument that you disagree on.
Exactly, that's right. And so, you know, the thing about this is, what's interesting is one way you can show that's really just tribes is during COVID, Democrats and Republicans switched sides several times. You know, at first it was extremely, right-coded to think, oh, the coronavirus could be an issue because, you know, and the
Yeah,
left
it's a huge switch, actually. Yeah,
it's a huge switch, right? Like you can't explain this by some reference to kind of immutable right and left. At first, it was something where the China virus was a huge deal, and it was racist to talk about the China virus. Then switched sides, and then Trump was saying, we need to slow down the testing. This is not a big deal, et cetera. And the left was saying, oh my God, we need to test more, et cetera. Total switch from.
And it's just
2
to
months ago.
oppose him, do you think?
Just to oppose him.
Is it just to
both to oppose each other? Both to oppose
and
each
you
other.
kind of predicted
I don't even want to get yes.
He's always right about everything.
Well, I'm not always. I mean, some of my investments work, some of them don't. That's how I kind of record them. But I do think I got this one correct mostly. So then what happened is Trump came out in favor of vaccines, and then Kamala Harris and others said that they would potentially not take a Trump vaccine because it had been rushed through.
So many people said that.
So he said that during a debate.
Yeah, during debate.
Yeah.
And then it flipped again, where now the right is, like anti-vax, and, some of them are skeptical of the germ theory of disease, and the left wanted masks for 4-year-olds forever or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it is not necessarily that like, oh, both sides have a piece of the truth. It could be that both sides are actually like gone in some ways, and you just kind of be like, okay, just let them slug it out, like as.
So is that what you see, like as an individual, you're just like why, unless it why get involved in this fight that's just going to go on forever?
See, the thing is, like when we read
I guess
about,
if you really believe in one of the things, then maybe
that's right. So when you read about other societies in like space and time, do you want to get in the middle of the Protestants and Catholics when they're arguing over whether the wafer is the body of Christ or not, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to get in the middle of that, right? Like, slug it out, good luck, right? May the best man win, and just basically be away from that. Same with like, Sunni Shiite. Do you want to be in the middle of the Iran-Iraq
Danny and his
conflict?
girlfriend arguing over a piece of cake.
Or something? Yeah, exactly.
Something like that, yeah.
No, yeah.
But do you think that there's some people who will essentially say like, oh, it must be nice to not have to be able to sit on the sidelines, because for them they go, this is like real world consequence?
Well, yeah. So here's the thing. First is the folks who say that are usually those are the folks who are usually also complaining about white privilege. They tend to be the most privileged whites.
Yes.
So to speak,
Absolutely.
right? And so it's like Barnard, bam. You could just be like, okay, which private school? Sidley? Okay, which one did you go?
But also like anytime. Like anyone, I feel like when you're trying to do anything like moving forward, at least in your own life, anyone that starts being like, oh, I would do that, but I have like some moral, you're just like, those are the people that tune out immediately.
There's an immediate counter argument to that, by the way. And you know the game of slaps in New York? Like, you go like this, on top of each other, right? So what they're trying to do is you're putting forth an argument and they're asserting a dominance move. They're trying to say you're a bad person, right? They're not arguing true false. They're saying you're bad. Oh, it must be nice to be so privileged that you don't have to be concerned about this. And then, so, you can try arguing true false, but you have to actually go back with they're a bad person. Well, actually, the rest of the world doesn't want to get involved in another white on white war. So white on white violence, why don't you guys get and all these other poor people around the world can go and build up their own economies, right? And, so the thing is that somebody like that, essentially they're like, they don't even realize how aggressive they're being necessarily verbally. What they're trying to do is insult you and gain status. And you just can't let that, you just have to do it back.
I always feel like too, I think that's exactly right. And then also you're like sort of like a casualty to their agenda. Like you're not even on the same wavelength. It's just like, you're trying to do something and it's just like a little bit in the way for them sort of, you know what I mean? It's like, so you should not don't even like these people are irrelevant.
They're actually very a good way to think about it. We know the term greedy, right? These people are very status greedy. Okay, they want to always have the highest status in any interaction. They're not willing to just engage with you as a peer and so on. They want to assert a dominance move of you're a sinner somehow. Oh, and they've got a practice repertoire really of sort of verbal tools, scalpels and hammers and so on, right? That actually were kind of developed in academia to win various kinds of faculty lounge battles. Okay.
Yeah, nerd battles.
Yeah, exactly. So all of these battles in like humanities, departments and so on, those weapons spilled out onto Twitter.
They work a little less
Well, especially
now,
like
right?
it's like the debating stuff. Like the amount of people who you go on Twitter and just the average person on Twitter just knows every, like debating Latin debating term, and you're like, why do you all know this?
Right, exactly, because it's mimetic, right?
Yeah.
In fact, actually, I had this. Hold on, I'm just gonna read this tweet to you, just because it kind of illustrates something. Hold on. My dude, bad take. This ain't it, Chief. Read the room and do better. I know you hope she sees this, bro, but as a haver of good opinions, you're posting cringe. So stop licking dem boots, log off, touch grass, and delete your account.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
It's like all of them in just one.
It's all there just one, right?
Yeah.
And so the thing about this is, I posted this.
That's how I tweet.